Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, we're talking Courtiers. I'm so glad you're here. It's Monday. Let's make it a great day. I decided for this video we needed to do a messy hair, Meghan don't care montage. So take a look at your screen, a lot for those. There were plenty of pictures to choose from. You guys have definitely pointed out in the comments how that seems to be her go-to thing. What she seems to think is a chic bun turns out, well, like a mess, like her personality. Anyway, guys, I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited to jump back into, say it with me now, Courtiers. So glad you're here. I'm thrilled. I just can't thank you enough for all the lovely comments and all the support you show. It really does mean the whole wide world. If you want to further support the show, check out Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. I'm telling you, we're doing a lot of fun stuff over there. I don't mean to keep hitting you over the head with it, but I'm telling you, it's uncensored. And so we can cuss freely, and we do. And I have Jay on with me, and we record, and we put up like every 2 to 3 days new Meghan and Harry stuff. So we have all these executive producers now. I can't thank you guys enough. I will be shouting you out at the end of the video. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Everybody that's joined me on Patreon. All right, without further ado, let's talk. Ready? Courtiers. Okay, guys, so we pick up, some of you guys like to read along with me. We are on page 293. Now, this is August of 2019. We got the Africa tour coming up. Things are awful. Literally, the sentence I pick up with says, by August, things were, quote, awful intense with the Sussex household. It sounds like it. Remember, we just came off all the, well, it's not even stopped. It's continuing on the bullying allegations and the horrible mistreatment of the staff and, so much going on. I just don't understand. I talk about it all the time. I'm sorry, but I don't understand how anybody could support these two after not only all the lies, it's just the way that so many people have come forward to say, yeah, there's mistreatment of staff. And again, that's where I love you guys, because so many people have left in the comments, you know, if it's one allegation, you know, you could say, well, maybe a disgruntled, but with all these people coming forward, say, you know, and the staff turnover, right? They've lost staff not only in the UK, but also when they moved to the US. They've lost staff with Archwell. So that's got to say something. It's not normal. All right, so again, by August, things were awful intense. Sounds nice, huh? More significantly, there were clues that, again, with hindsight, might have suggested that Harry and Meghan did not see their long-term future as working members of the royal family. We know this. They've been planning this all along. Again, I go back to, remember, in case you didn't see it in the Revenge, there it is, recap, I explained that when Oprah actually called for an interview right before her wedding, and Meghan said, it's not the time yet, but I will be calling you. So this has been planned, right? Okay, so here's the part I wanted to talk about. Meanwhile, staff were increasingly aware of the presence in the background of Meghan's business manager, her lawyer, and her agent. So all these California people, all Meghan's people were in the picture. And again, I got to give Valentine Low the credit because he writes, he really goes into detail about things, and he explains how it was it made things even tougher for the palace staff who was trying to help them, but Harry and Meghan would not communicate, right? They wanted to, it was very weird. They wanted to remain tight-lipped, of course, with anything having to do with California, so they would keep the palace people in the dark. Meanwhile, again, according to them, they'll spin it as, we didn't have any help. Nobody was there to help us. We were on our own, and people were mean, all that crap that they say. So, shocker of shockers, they lied. There was a whole team trying to help them, and Valentine goes into how there was a lot of secrecy surrounding the couple's conversations involving the U.S. So certain people would be in the know about what was going on with like small projects, but mostly they would have these, quote, private meetings. And so it was difficult for the palace to manage things, to keep them on task, to even try to help them, right? They're making everything difficult for everybody. So nice, huh? Making things difficult and treating people like crap. Really nice couple. At the same time, they were preparing for their Africa tour. So the Kensington Palace team, I'm calling it Kensington Palace, their Courtiers, their team, they were trying to persuade the couple that you need to do interviews with the British media. Sam Cohen, remember we've talked about her, who was handpicked by the Queen to go over and try to help Meghan and Harry. She was encouraging them, hey, you need to talk to the media to build up this tour. She even suggested that Tom Bradby, who, you know my feelings on that guy, he's the good friend of Harry's who has not done, I wouldn't say journalistic reports on them. It's more fluff pieces. Whatever Harry and Meghan want to tell them, he doesn't really question. It was suggested that they talk to Tom Bradby, but get this. They were so focused on doing the Oprah interview, even at this point. Again, they were still living at Frogmore, and which is funny knowing what we know now about Frogmore, but they were still living there. They were still pretending to be working royals. They didn't want the interview to promote the work that they were doing with the royal family to overshadow the potential of doing this interview for Oprah Winfrey. So their stipulation with him was that Harry and Meghan could not do interviews together or be in the same shot. That would go against their deal with Oprah. I'm quoting directly from Valentine Low here. I do recall there was maybe a few, I do remember seeing some shots of the two of them, but that may have been more publicity from the palace themselves or the team running them. But it sounds like with Bradby, I always want to call him Bradby, remember she did that solo, like, thanks for asking. Nobody's asked me how I'm doing, You know that interview. Anyway, she did it solo, and now it makes so much sense. I just figured she's just an attention hog, and she just wanted the camera for herself. So the other issue was that during this tour, which seemed to be going well for them, they decided that it was time to pursue legal action against the Mail on Sunday. And I'm laughing because these two cannot get out of their own way. So many people said, not a good idea. You don't want to do this. They were trying to advise them, like, you're going to be overshadowing the work that you're doing here in Africa. They don't care. They come up with these ideas. They're like toddlers, right? They come up with the ideas and they just pout until they get their way. So the palace had a solicitor that they worked with quite a bit. His name was Gerard Tyrrell. He was a media expert with a firm, and he ended up going on record afterwards to explain what happened. It sounds like he had strongly advised against suing the newspaper. She didn't like that answer. She talked to other advisors, including Prince Charles, former communications secretary, Patty Harverson, who still helped William and Harry in an informal capacity. And they were all saying, no, you don't want to do this. This is a bad idea. Remember, this was all having to do with suing the Mail on Sunday because that People magazine, I know you know it, but I have to go back over it in case you don't. The People magazine article had come out in defense of Meghan. So Thomas Markle went to the Mail on Sunday and showed the letter. He felt like he felt like the People article had misrepresented him, and he felt like he needed a voice. So he did it, and Meghan got pissed. So she sued the Mail on Sunday. That's what they like to do, is sue. They're very happy about that. But again, I point out they didn't sue Tom Bower when he wrote his book, and they didn't sue Valentine Low. So there must be some truth to this stuff. Just saying. These people pointed out, well, if you do this, you're going to be putting your friends and family through this whole legal process, right? And so what? The letter's already out there. What's your deal? So Meghan, however, was determined to go ahead. Of course she was. She was repeatedly asking why no one had filed the legal claim, and according to Valentine, would walk around saying, why is nobody listening to me? My God, what a nightmare. So she and Hazmat ended up going to stay with Elton John, and lo and behold, Elton John was like, I'll set you up with a lawyer. Don't worry about it. So he set her up with this firm that Elton had used before. I have the name here somewhere. They just said Shillings. Represented Elton before, had a reputation for being the most aggressive, liable firm in Britain, as well as for charging eye-watering fees. So Meghan dumped the palace lawyer and took on this lawyer that Elton had recommended. She was on her way to court. So this move marked another step in her distancing from the palace advisors. So once she dropped the palace attorney, she and Harry, it sounds like, decided, we don't have to keep the household in the loop whatsoever what was happening with any potential legal action. None of them knew that the Duchess was suing the Mail on Sunday until they were in South Africa. The team was completely surprised, and according to Valentine, they were aghast. They thought it was a colossal mistake, not least because it threatened to derail the rest of the tour. So again, they don't care. They're supposed to be there doing these good works on behalf of the royal family and, bringing awareness to things, all that stuff. And no, they would rather overshadow it with their need to sue. Crazy. There was, however, little anybody could do about it. Harry and Meghan were set on a course, and they were not to be diverted. Okay, so 3 weeks later, that ITV interview was released. Actually, the trailer came out first, and they called it Harry and Meghan, An African Journey. It was the first real intimation that the public had that not all was well in Meghan's world, that she might be a victim as well as, quote, a possibly rather difficult employer and sister-in-law. So I love that even that kind of backfired and people could see through this already. I think most of us could. The fact that they are standing in South Africa talking about how bad they have things. We talked about this at length in the revenge episode, so I'm not going to go back over it, but that's honestly when it started to turn for me, is to see how clueless these two are and to see how much the victim card they're going to play. Just a reminder, this interview, this documentary, whatever you want to call it, came out right as William and Catherine had been on a tour of Pakistan. And so people tend to think that it was meant to overshadow coverage of the Cambridge's tour. So the Cambridge team was not happy about this, and they saw it as a deliberate attempt to knock the Cambridges out of the headlines. Of course they did this on purpose. Of course it was. It was all the things, because we both know these two twits are so jealous they can't even see straight or think straight, and no team would convince them otherwise, right? So relations between the two households were becoming quite tense. When the documentary ended up coming out in October, it showed not only Meghan's, quote, evident pain, bullshit, but also how far William and Harry had drifted apart. So remember, Harry he was asked by Bradby about the rift between him and William. Harry chose not to deny it and said instead, we're certainly on different paths at the moment. But I will always be there for him. I wish Jay was here to do the accent. He's not. But anyway, he says, I'll always be there for him, and I know he'll always be there for me. He's the worst. I go back and forth who I can't stand more. I don't know. It's hard. It's a tough choice. They're both bad. So William came home from the Pakistan tour, and he was taken aback by such a stark portrayal of his brother and his wife's, his Instagram loving bitch wife, to quote South Park. But he was taken aback to see their, quote, unhappiness. He realized that they're in a crisis. So he felt like they're in a fragile place. And listen to this. This is the part that really got me in this book. You ready? So according to Valentine, William got on and messaged Harry to ask if he could come over and see him and meet with him about this. This put Harry and Meghan into a spin. What should they do? Initially, Harry was in favor of it, but then he spoke to William again and asked William who he would tell. Basically, who will know that they spoke. William said, I have to clear my schedule, so that would mean telling his private secretary. Well, at that point, Harry said, don't come. So Harry was so concerned that William's team would leak the visit to the press that he'd rather not see his brother than risk getting into the papers. These two are the worst people ever, talking about, of course, Harry and Meghan. Hank and Skank. They go on national TV and bitch that the family, isn't helping them and they're struggling. So the family aka William, offers to help to see how he can help with their struggling, Harry won't meet with them. They are truly the worst. I sound like a broken record when I say that. I get it. But they really are. I just keep thinking about this. This stuck with me so much that William was being the caring one and Harry won't even meet with him. Because then how would their story go? How would they be able to spin it? Woe is us. Our family wasn't there for us. When the family's literally trying to be there for them. I think that says amazing things about William, and it just confirms everything we can't stand about Harold and fraud. So Valentine then goes back into this ITV interview, and he compares it to the things that she said on Oprah. He goes into the untruths, which we've talked about at length. Everything from how could she not have had her passport and gone to all these countries? How could they have gotten married 3 days before? They didn't, things like that. Now, the interesting part he goes into is, it's one of my favorite stories, that bridesmaid dress fitting where Meghan made Catherine cry. We know Duchess duplicity. Duchess can't tell the truth about anything, decides that she's like, no, it was the other way around. So Valentine kind of goes into this and said Meghan became obsessed with trying to persuade the press office to put something out denying that story. However, they were like, no, we can't do this because it would create a precedent. It kind of feeds into the personal tittle tattle. They don't want that, right? It's not a good look. But the reason it's being brought up here is because he points out that it's not a good look for Meghan. I mean, all of us knew this. She'd spent all those months complaining about her reputation had been smeared to the press. Nobody asked how she was doing. And yet she's doing this to Kate, knowing that Catherine would never respond. So she knew what she was doing. And all those claims she made in this ITV interview of being the victim and nobody asking how she was doing is what she's actually doing to other people. But according to Valentine, this is an ongoing thing for Meghan. This was not the first time she tried to persuade the press office to brief journalists about an issue that was bothering her. Another was concerning the departure of a member of staff whose settlement deal contained a non-disclosure. I wish they were let out of those NDAs. Despite the employee being legally obliged to remain silent, the Sussexes, who say they did not know about the NDA, repeatedly tried to get Knopf to brief journalists about what Meghan saw as the reason behind the employee's departure. Well, Knopf refused because he disagreed with Meghan's interpretation of events. He thought the briefing against the individual was wrong. So when the Times was in communications with her lawyers about the bullying allegations in February 2021, her attorney's letter to the newspaper included a repetition of Meghan's allegations against this employee. It was a fine line, it seems, between defending Meghan and attacking those who had crossed her. Same complaint we've all had. They sure don't mind asking for privacy and yet spilling everybody else's everything. Again, look at Speyer and every other interview they've done, right? It's just, the rules just don't apply to them. At least that's what they seem to think. So, so frustrating. Anyway, you guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this recap as much as I have. I'm really enjoying this book, and I can't wait to keep going. We're actually just about to finish up exit plans, and we'll jump into chapter 15, The Greatest Kindness. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you want to further support the show, definitely check out my Patreon. This is the part where I like to thank my executive producers. And if you want to become an executive producer and get your shout out, check out patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. So I would like to say a huge thank you to everybody on Patreon, but I want to call out my executive producers. So huge thank you to Kristen, to Linda, Melissa. Thank you, Paige, Teresa, Mary, Amy, Mr. K, Kay, Shauna, thank you, Brenda, thank you, Aaron and Frank, Kristen, Ann M, Amanda, Ann H, Karen, Corey, K. King, Glennis. Thank you, Karen, to Dewey. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Adair Becker. Thank you, Erica, Amber, Annette, Barb G, Diana LOL, Andrea, Allison, Jean, Lori, Pauline, and KT. Thank you so much for being my executive producers, for supporting the show and everything that you do. Again, check out Patreon if that's something you're interested in. Also, I do still have my merch available. We have Recollections May Vary, Hank and Skank, Make It Make Sense. God, that applies so much to this episode, right? Make it make sense. This is a load of pants. It's one of my favorite things to say. So check all that out on my merch site. I'll put the link in the comments below. Guys, thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoy your Monday, and I will talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.